What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Into the Overhead. Today we're doing our very first deep dive, and we thought, why not choose a pretty important topic? I think something that Dean and I as instructors get asked all the time, which is, how do you choose your gear? Is that true, Dean? You get asked that all the time?
Yeah, but before we go there, why don't we explain to the listeners what exactly our deep dives are?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
So our deep dives are, as we're doing our regular episodes, anything that we can think of that comes up where, hey, this particular one little minuscule topic can be an entire episode all by itself, as opposed to a regular episode where we talk, usually, what would you say, Josh, 2, 3, maybe 4 topics in general?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, so the deep dives are going to be focused on just one specific question or topic where Josh and I will debate. We'll talk about it back and forth. Hopefully you guys can not only listen for entertainment, but also learn something from it. Because for me, that's what this is a lot about, helping people learn how to dive safely, make right choices, and be better in the water for themselves and their buddy.
Yeah, no doubt.
There's also talk about, we're actually going to be somewhere in the future bringing on a third person or a special guest, and we're going to call those a trimix dive. Because there'll be 3 of us.
Trimix. Oh, I thought that meant we were going to try really hard on those episodes. Now I get that you mean 3 when you say trimix. That makes sense.
There you go.
Yeah, like Dean said, we the ultimate goal of this is, of course, to promote safety, to promote diving, and try to help everybody that listens learn something. Because if one thing we've learned throughout our diving careers is that it doesn't matter how long you've been diving, there's always something you can learn. Maybe not from us, but if we can encourage you to seek information from other people, even, that would still be a win.
Yeah, so mention some other people with specialties on this episode or the next episode, and they can go and talk to those people to get some real information.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll give you the names of the smart people, and then you can go talk to them. That's what we're here to do.
We're not the smart ones. We're just the good-looking ones.
Well, one of us is the good-looking one.
At least you are.
Okay, so let's get right into it. One thing I want to say before we get started is that Dean and I have very different gear. Our configurations are roughly the same, but the specific equipment that we use is not exactly the same. And the reason that I find value here is because the point of this episode is to sort of talk about the gear selection process. And the way that we're going to do that is by discussing what gear we have and why we bought it. There will be instances where the reason we chose a particular piece of gear will be something, super simple, like it was cheap and it did the job. For example, my scuba mask. It's a deep sea mask. It cost me like $29, I think. I mean, the band is it's like not peeling. It's ripped a little bit on the side, but until the thing breaks, I'm not going to buy another one. I carry a spare, of course, but until it breaks, I'm not buying another one because it does its job,
Doesn't it have a user replaceable mask strap?
It does. Here's the problem. The mask is no longer made. So when it breaks, I may throw a slap strap on there or something else to that effect. But for the moment, I love the mask the way it is. I'm going to be sad to see it go in the form that I received it. So in the meantime, I'm just going to wear it until the wheels fall off, so to speak.
Well, how about you just take the wheel off and put a new slap strap wheel on?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Seems so wasteful.
So you'd rather have that happen while you're standing at Ginny somewhere in the river run, gearing up, and you go to put your mask on your face and the strap breaks. Then you got to unkit all your side mount gear, walk all the way back up to your truck, get another mask so you have a primary and a backup, because having a backup in tech diving is important.
So you admit that you'd rather do that?
Pardon?
You admit you dive side mount is what you're saying?
I do.
Perfect. So to answer your question, yeah, probably. Honestly, it really just depends. Although I get kind of salty when things go wrong. I just like, I'm not going to dive. So if my mask strap breaks, I'll cancel the whole thing and go home and drive 2.5 hours home pissed off.
Since you mentioned that, our next deep dive is going to be about the 3-thing rule.
The 3-thing rule. Okay,
great. 3-thing rule. Next episode.
Right. So let's jump into it. First of all, we both dive side mount. So this episode will be focused on what we dive when we're in side mount. I know that I dive single tank back mount. Dean also dives doubles on his back sometimes, but for this episode, we'll focus on our primary gear usage. So let's talk about air source first and foremost. Dean, what are you carrying on your side, and tell me why?
So my gas source, my tanks are the Blue Steel LP85s. And let me just throw a caveat or a statement in here. In no way, shape, or form is this any type of solicitation or sales pitch from either one of us. This is just talking about the gear and why we dive it, plain and simple. But we will give brands if people are interested. So I dive the Blue Steel LP85s. And mainly I dive them because when I first started scuba diving, July 1st of 2012, I bought my very first set of tanks and they were LP95s. And I was diving them in single tank back mount config until I found side mount. And then diving those in side mount, I thought I was great. I had more gas than everybody else diving 85s, right? Makes sense. But there is a concern where the extra weight of the tank with the gas in the tank added weight and the hydrostatic or hydrodynamic drag from the bigger, girthier tank having to pull that or push that through the water, there's always the question of which is going to actually be more efficient. So the extra gas you need in your bladder to maintain those heavier LP95s in the water, it may or may not be worth it. So for me, I did a dive at Jackson Blue Spring, which is, pretty much my home spring. I did same day. So flow was, I'm not going to say identical. I didn't have a flow meter going, but same exact day. So flow very similar. I did a dive in the LP85s and the LP95s, and I took the exact same path, and I actually made it further, believe it or not, with the LP85s.
Now, were both tanks cranked to equal volume? Obviously not equal pressure because they're different volume.
3,600 PSI on both. So the volume was different, but the pressure was the same.
So realistically, you definitely had more gas in the 95s at 3,600 PSI then.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. So why not 50s? Because you dive a Sidewinder, right? So I didn't specify open circuit versus rebreather. So do you dive 50s on your rebreather or what?
I do. When I dive my Sidewinder, I do dive the LP50s up until a certain point. If I'm going past a certain point of penetration in the cave, then I want extra gas with me, and then I will dive my LP85s. If I'm going even further and pushing even beyond the limits that I'm comfortable diving my 85s, then I'll take safety bottles. But when, as you know, diving a CCR, you always need to have enough gas with you to bail out from the furthest point of penetration on open circuit.
Okay, so, and I think I sort of glazed over something. I asked you why not LP50s. I didn't even specify why I picked the number 50 out of thin air. So can you maybe explain why LP50s are such a common and popular size tank for side mount if you're not on an 85?
Sure. They're very small. They're thinner. They're the same diameter as an aluminum 40 or a buddy bottle, a deco bottle, depending on what type of diving you're doing. People call it different things. But a 30, a 40, an LP50 all have the same diameter. The benefit of the 50s over an aluminum 40 is that aluminum 40s are 40 cubic feet when filled to 3,000 PSI. An LP50 is 50 cubic feet when filled to 2640. So if you take that tank, and in cave country, a lot of people will overfill a steel tank, you end up with approximately 72 cubic feet of gas in a single LP50. So with the set, you have about 145 or 140, let's just call it really conservative, 140 cubic feet of gas.
And on the topic of filling tanks over pressure, neither Dean or I are specifically telling you that you can or should fill your tanks past their rated service pressure. Obviously, they have service pressures for a reason. We are simply saying that we as cave divers do that, and we are not saying that we have been given permission to do so by anybody else. It's just a common practice in which we participate at our own risk, and you should consider the risks before you ever attempt to overpressurize a steel or aluminum cylinder.
Absolutely.
So I do 85s, and I do 85s because I'm on open circuit. So of course I want to carry enough gas to make meaningful penetration into the cave. If I was on a rebreather like I used to be, then the 50s, or in my case OMS 45s, are sufficient for bailout from about, for me, 1,500 is fine for me. 2,000 will be pushing a little bit, but 1,500 I'm very, very comfortable swimming out on. It's definitely plenty of gas, but I like knowing that I've got a lot of gas to get out. So I think that pretty much covers our air sources. So let's go on to thermal protection.
Well,
I personally,
let me ask you
go
one
ahead.
question.
Sure.
I dive LP50s. Why do you dive
Okay.
45s instead of 50s? Why not have that 5 extra cubic feet of gas?
Are we going to do 2 episodes of of me saying I have a confession to make? Because I feel like we are. Okay.
Stop doing things you need to confess, Josh.
I'm not going to name names, James Draker, but I bought, he's the hero in this story. I bought some tanks that were kind of old, and I took my local dive shop's word for it when they said that they were 50s. And this was a mistake that I made early on in my side mount career. I thought for the longest time that those were 50s, and I'm not afraid to admit I made the mistake, people. I thought those tanks were 50s. While I was with James Draker doing some side mount sort of refresher stuff with him, he looked at my tanks and he said, "Hey man, why do you have OMS 45s?" And I was like, "Those are 50s, JD. What are you talking about?" No, they're not 50s. They are 45s. So that was a wake up call to me that I should, definitely pay more attention to what's stamped into my tank and really know the true volume of gas that I'm carrying with me. I've never had any issues where I've had to bail out, but had I been pushing the limits of those tanks and had to bail out
based on a volume of 50
trouble.
feet, yeah,
exactly. So it's important to really pay attention to what you're carrying. Know what volume you have at the individual pressures that you're at, and make sure that you're on top of all of your gear.
So two things come to mind to me from this story that you've said. First of all, absolutely trust but verify everything. Right? Shop tells you they're 50s. Like you said, look at the tank. Don't just, okay, great, thanks, and pay for them and walk out without a doubt. Secondly, it's a silly little thing like this. You took their word for it, and because you didn't verify, if you had been diving where you thought you had 100 cubic feet of gas, that 10 cubic feet difference, you could have ended up being the statistic or another one of statistics of someone who was 100 feet from their next bottle when they paid the ultimate price, which obviously would suck, but yeah, everybody should trust but verify everything without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely lucky that it was, between the purchase and the discovery of the issue was a pretty short amount of time with only a couple of dives. So, it's like you said, somebody, possibly me, could have paid a price there. At my sac rate of around 0.6 cubic feet a minute, that 10 extra cubic feet would definitely have made a difference for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you owe good old Jimmy Draker a thank you.
I do. And I did thank him. And I have now thanked him publicly to all 53 people that watch our show.
Well, we have
Thank you so
many?
much for the support, by the way. Yeah, well, I'm 49 of those people.
Well, wait, my mom is 3 of them. So who's the last one?
I think it's
I
you.
haven't subscribed
Don't you watch
yet.
the show? Oh, wow. Way to put a lot of faith into the show, man. So are we good on the tank?
Yeah, we're done with
the tank
tanks.
discussion.
Let's go.
Let's talk thermal protection.
Okay.
I dive a dry suit, and there's 2 reasons for that. Actually, there's 3 reasons for that. Okay, one of the reasons goes back to gear selection, and it's that it looks cool, which is quite possibly one of the most important factors when you're deciding gear. I don't like the face that you're making. I think that if you were as cool as me, you would understand that it's important to look cool.
So you're one of those people that believes that without a doubt, safety comes absolutely third.
Right.
Okay.
Looking cool, feeling cool, being safe.
Way more important.
Okay. Disclaimer. Okay, guys. Obviously, safety is number 1, and what gear is going to do the type of job that you need it to do most efficiently, effectively, and safely will be what you need to be geared.
Yeah.
Towards.
If there's ever any question as to whether or not we're being sarcastic, 99.9% of the time the question is going to be yes.
Yeah, for sure. So dry suit.
What dry suit do you wear?
I wear a Scuba Force Expedition SE dry suit.
Are you an expediter?
I am not an expediter or an expeditioner. Okay. But, well, actually, since I wear a suit that's called the Expedition, I feel like that makes me an expeditioner.
By default, of course.
By proxy. Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So yeah, I wear the Expedition SE. I'm a Scuba Force dealer, so I got it at dealer price, and I had never had any experience with dry suits. So, there is something to be said about choosing gear that you can afford, especially in the beginning when it's your first one. So this was my first dry suit. It was something I could afford. I'd seen people wear it in cave country, so I had no reason to think that it wasn't an excellent dry suit, as it were. And it has been. I've had it for a little over a year, but I don't have anything to compare it to. I don't even have any other Scuba Force dry suits at the moment, so I literally don't know if it's the best or if it's the worst. What I do know is that it works. It keeps me warm.
Okay,
and
I'm going
dry,
to put you on the spot
usually.
now. You said you're a Scuba Force dealer.
Indeed.
It's the only dry suit you've ever dove.
That's correct.
And you love it that much that you became a dealer for it. That's pretty awesome. That says a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you shouldn't, in my opinion, you shouldn't sell or promote products that you personally haven't tried and have some connection with. For example, I took by the time this episode comes out, I'll have finished my regulator technician service class for Scuba Force,
Okay.
and I don't like selling regulators from Scuba Force if I can't service them. So I've been pushing for months during their change of leadership and all that stuff to get certified to do it, because I want to stand behind the products that I sell. So not only do I use them, I service them, I sell them. Same thing with my dry suits.
Cool. So let me ask you a question. You're not NAUI or SSI, right? Actually, NAUI's independent, but SSI is really a shop-driven agency. The agencies that you teach for, are any of them shop-driven, or are you just?
That's correct. I'm not NAUI or SSI. I am SDI, which allows instructors to be independent.
Cool. As am I. And one of the benefits, let's just mention this real quick. One of the benefits that I believe in from being an independent instructor, and for those of you that may know that I work with Ed Sorensen at Cave Adventures, I like being an independent instructor because I am not forced to push or sell anything. Ed doesn't say, hey, you've got to sell this or you've got to sell that or you got to, I push what I believe in, which I think is absolutely awesome. So cool.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, for sure. And there's some requirement as a dive professional in some shops that you have to not just be someone who's all about selling gear. That's all about teaching. You also have to be a salesman, and I can see how that's not something that some people would really be interested in, myself included. I don't actively sell any of my gear. People just say, hey, I heard you can sell this type of stuff. Would you help me out and sell me there or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. But you'll never see me on the groups or even on this podcast saying, hey, come buy this for me.
Right. Cool.
So anyways, back on topic.
Let's get into what I dive. I have dove to this date four dry suits. My very first one, I still have it, was an OS Systems. They called it the SAR suit, Search and Rescue and Recovery, or Search and Recovery and Rescue, or something like that. But black on the bottom, bright orange top, reflective tape everywhere, which worked great for up in the Northeast. And I got probably 700 or 800 dives on it. And now I just keep it up there as like a backup suit. After that, I went to a Pinnacle Black Ice. And then after the Black Ice, I went to the Pinnacle Tahoe, which was a little bit less expensive. That was their attempt at a sub $15,000 to $1,500 suit. And it was a fantastic suit. And I will say, I do enjoy the style of neoprene dry suit diving because it fits you a lot like a wetsuit, because it's much more snug, less wrinkles, less ripples, less drag in the water when you're diving in anything that has any kind of flow. But I teach a lot and I dive a lot, and I needed another suit. And I finally said, hey, if I'm going to get a backup suit, or if I'm going to get another suit and make my primary suit that I have now be a backup, which was the Tahoe, I'm going to buy something that is going to be the best thing I could possibly buy. And I wanted to have something that's going to give me longevity and very little downtime and very little repair. And I will say, out of all the divers I know quite a few people that dived or were diving at the time, the SF Tech.
I've seen that a lot.
And I will say the only complaint I've ever heard about the SF Tech dry suit, there's two. They don't travel well because they're a little heavy, because they're neoprene and they don't dry as fast as a tri-lam suit. And the second is the price tag. They're not a cheap suit. I am a firm believer in buy what you believe in. And I also believe in buying once and crying once. So if the best that I can find costs more than I want to spend, I'm going to be okay with spending it because it's the best for a reason. It's gotten a reputation for a reason. So I bought the SF Tech, and I got to say, I have not had any disappointments with it. I've had to do some maintenance on it already, but again, I dive a lot. I've had the thing for, let's see, I got it April of 21. So I've had it for about 15 months. I've already had all the seals redone and the zipper, but it's probably got 400 dives on it already.
Wow.
So it is. So I couldn't be happier. If you want to know about particular options that I have 2 pockets, left and right, both on the thigh in side mount config, which means instead of being directly on the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock clock position, it's more of like a 10 and 2. So they're not in the way of your side mount tanks, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I do not believe in, or I don't really love, I'm not gonna say I don't believe in them. I don't love boots that are built into the dry suit, because you put the suit on and you're walking around and you're wearing through a sole, right? It's a rubber sole, and you're going to wear through it. And then when you do finally wear through it, you're going to have a hole and you're going to have to send the entire suit in for repair. I think it's so much more convenient to just wear a wetsuit boot over a sock or a rock boot or a set of Converse or whatever. You get a hole in it, they get beat up, they get torn up, they look like crap, whatever the reason may be. You go buy another set, boom, you're back in business. You don't have to send the suit out for repair. I also have user replaceable, flexible seals on the wrists, and I have a user replaceable silicone neck seal as well. Again, I can't have a lot of downtime, so I keep spare seals. If I pop a seal or tear one or whatever, I can replace it right at the dive site.
So while we're on the topic of thermal protection, of course, the whole goal of this episode wasn't just for us to share what we dive, but also to share the selection process and the reasoning why. So we actually talked about this on the last episode we recorded, I think, which was what tri-lam is. But I've got 2 questions for you. One, just in case, could you quickly explain what tri-lam means? I think anybody listening to this probably knows what neoprene is, but maybe not tri-lam. And then 2, can you explain why would someone buy a dry suit and not a wetsuit? And are there reasons that go beyond, say, thermal protection?
Yeah. So, all right. Let's start with the first question.
Tri-lam
What
first.
is a tri-lam suit? So a tri-lam suit is it's basically a tri-laminate. There's 3 layers of material that make up the suit. They dry really well and really fast. They're lighter than the neoprene suits. And like I said in the last episode, it's basically like diving a hefty bag. All of your thermal protection, or 98% of it. Again, I don't do the studies. I'm just picking a random number that seems accurate to me. But most of the thermal protection comes from the undergarments that you wear underneath it. And that would be dictated by the temperatures of water that you're going to be diving in. And sometimes it can get tricky because, like right now, the Gulf of Mexico, the surface is like 85 or 87 degrees, which is pretty darn warm. And then if you're going down to, the property Oriskany, it could easily be in the 60s or high 50s. I haven't been there in a while, but you do have to worry about temperature variations on the depths you're going to be diving. So, that should be considered. The SF Tech suit that I dive is actually the TNT Pro. TNT stands for titanium neoprene trilaminate, which kind of makes it sound like there's also 3 layers, but there's stuff that's blended and woven. Bottom line is, it is a very, very durable suit, like incredibly durable suit. I'm not showing, like where I have regular fabric on the stainless steel rods on the pocket flaps, so they open up evenly. In there's fabric holding the rod in, and I've got like a scuff on that which wore through, but I don't even have any visible scuff signs anywhere else on the suit. And for cave divers, that's kind of a very easy thing to do.
Interesting. So we've talked about air sources. We've talked about thermal protection. What's next on the list here?
Let's talk about, since we talked about tanks, let's talk about what we use on the tanks. Let's talk about the regs. Let's talk about the regs and hose length also, right? Because there we go. Okay. So I teach a lot of my students, maybe even most of my students, almost anything in cave diving, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, Josh. You can ask the same questions to 6 instructors and you'll get 8 different answers, right? Everybody has their own opinion. There's nothing wrong with it.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.
Everybody should be able to voice their opinion. That's totally fine. So on my tanks, I have several different types of regs that I use, but primarily I dive the Dive Right XTs. I think they're a great reg. I've probably got, I don't know, 900-ish dives on the very first set of Dive Right XTs that I bought, and they still work great. They're faded a little bit. They're scratched to hell, but they still work fantastic. I also use Deep Six, their signature regulators. And I chose those two because I've tried a bunch of different regs. I happen to like to flip over and swim inverted and look at the ceilings while I'm cave diving. And those are the two regs that I find that stay the driest. They don't become snorkels when you flip over and invert and let a bunch of water in. So that's specifically why I dive those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question. So the Dive Right set, they have XT, 1, 2, 3, 4. So just in case people were curious and they want to look at exactly which ones you dive, which XT for first and second stage do you dive? Like, for example, my first stages are XT1s and my second stages are XT4s, the new very small black cover.
Mine are probably 5 years old, I believe, maybe 6, and I dive first and seconds are XT1s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a short hose on my left side tank, which goes over my neck, and reg just hangs here on a necklace. And then I dive my 7-foot hose on the right hand side.
And you're
sorry.
I was going to ask how you power your dry suit. I assume right tank.
My dry suit is from my right side. Yes, correct. My left side powers my inflator on my harness.
And do you use your fifth port? Your fifth port's the port on top of the swivel. For those of you that don't
the turret.
know.
Yeah, I do not dive a fifth port. I don't
Really?
believe in the fifth port at all. I am a firm believer that your tanks should be along your side, above the plane of your chest, below the plane of your back, and the hand wheel for the valve should point straight out. And a lot of times when you use the fifth port, having that hose right here is going to stab you in the rib. And a lot of people will fix that by rotating the tank a little bit, having the fifth port just come right across their nipples and across their chest. But then that points the hand wheel up a little bit instead of directly out, which when you have to feather for a catastrophic loss of gas, that might not be the easiest thing or most comfortable thing to do.
Well, that's interesting. I might have to have you try that with my
you dive the fifth?
my regs, and by that I mean me try it. I dive the fifth on both sides. Yeah, I've got a 4-inch rubber hose on the right side, very very short to power my dry suit, and a probably 6-inch on the left side to power my X Deep, which is my BCD side mount BCD Stealth 2.0.
We'll get the harnesses in a bit. So why do you dive the fifth port?
I dive the fifth port for 2 reasons, okay? And the first reason I'm going to say is important because it's about being impressionable. And that reason is because that's the way that I was taught. Okay? I feel that's an important thing to talk about because people should understand that there's nothing wrong with doing things the way that you were taught, but you should also experiment and be open-minded about new techniques, which is exactly why I just said I'll try, using the turret to power my dry suit and wing the next time I see Dene instead of always working with the fifth port.
Having an open mind in this hobby or sport is super important, without a doubt. One of my least favorite statements that a student can tell me when I ask them something, hey, how come you do that? Well, my lesson instructor told me to. Okay, but how come? Why? Well, because he told me to. I firmly believe, and this is something that Ed Sorensen has taught me from the very beginning, there should always be a why behind the how. If you don't understand the why and you're just doing it for whatever reason, like, what's the point, right? You should be able to understand the why. So if you do have to change it for, I don't know, let's call it different gear, different environment, different dive site, different buddy, even a different buddy might require you to change something on your gear, and if you don't understand the why, then you can't understand what's going to be a better option for that particular scenario. Does that make sense?
Yep. So I came into side mount. I was already side mount when I came into tech diving. So I was somewhat set into my ways. But the other reason that I use the fifth port is just I like the fact that the hose comes straight across, seems cleaner to me. I'm sure one could debate whether it's cleaner to come straight across or down and around or up and around, whatever the case may be. But for me, I like the way it looks. I like the way that it works. I do agree that it moves my hand wheel a little bit. In my case, it dips my hand wheel down because the tank is canked a little bit. Yeah, because my inflator hose has to come up. So if my inflator hose comes up, then naturally my hand wheel goes down. Really depending on which way you like your first stages to face. So we could maybe even talk about that. Me personally, my hand wheels are always on the outside, and my first stages face my body, not the floor. What about you?
So your hand wheels point out, or a little
Or
down,
on the outside,
and the first stages point
Yep.
towards your body. I'm
Yep,
having
that's
trouble
correct.
envisioning
Yep.
that. So
some people will have their first stages pointed out, obviously, like towards the floor. I have mine pointed towards the body, so my valve is closer to the floor than my first
okay, so you
stages are.
have your first stages up, tucked in under your armpit. Okay,
That's correct.
I thought you
Yes.
meant in this way. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, and that's basically the
No
two
worries.
philosophies, right? First stages up, first stages down. And there
Yep.
are very specific reasons why there's two different options. And a lot of people will say, well, you want to have your first stages up so they're protected by the valve and you're not going to bang into anything and you're not going to, hit them on the rocks or whatever. I've worn my first stages down from the very beginning. It's the way Ed taught me. And I will say, I have never, ever, ever banged them on anything. Not once, even grinding through some small stuff.
Yeah, the logic I have heard is the same. If the first stages are up, then they're protected. But even if they're down, if you really take a side profile look at your tank, your first stage doesn't come out further than the girth of your tank, if you will. So if anything were to scrape, it would be your tank long before it would actually be your first stage. So I totally get it. Again, for me, it's just what I've been doing, and I'm comfortable doing it. What's up? I see that look on your face.
If this is you, and this is your tank, if it's above the plane of your chest and below the plane of your back, it's not going to ever hit anything. But if you have it hanging down a little bit and your tanks are not in proper trim in proportion to your body, then it can be very susceptible to getting dinged on stuff. So in that case, then yes, if you can't have your tanks in proper trim, you should definitely weigh your first stages up. And that may be the case for people with any kind of, reach issues or mobility issues or shoulder problems. And please, anybody that's listening, if there's 64 by the end of this podcast, great. If you have any kind of physical limitation that makes you alter your gear, anything away from optimal configuration for that particular site, please make sure that you adjust your diving also. If you've got to have your tanks down a little so you can reach those valves, don't go through something that's, 3 inches taller than the height of your body. So,
right. So on the subject of regulators real quick, I have 4 sets actually. I have 2 sets of the Scuba Force Black Devil side mount kit. Again, part of the reason is I really feel like you have to own what you sell and support the gear that you sell to back it. So I've got 2 sets of those. I've got a set of the Apex XTX 50 side mount. That was my first kit. Again, my local dive shop gave me a good deal, so how could I say no? And I most recently acquired the XT1, XT4 dive right side mount regs, which I have one half dive with those, and so therefore I don't have enough experience to talk about them. But I'll
how
be
do you
using
do a
them
half a dive, Josh?
I put the whole set on and I got in the water and I realized that the short hose on the left tank is about 6 inches too short. So I got out of the water, took it off, and I put my Scuba Force one for my left side on my left tank and left my dive right on the right tank. So you flip back and forth
from Scuba Force to dive right, Scuba Force dive right, Scuba Force dive right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a little half and half, I think.
Just to clarify for anybody listening, when you're diving side mount, gas does have weight. So as you breathe one tank down, that side gets lighter, and then you got to switch regs so you're staying in balance left to right.
I think we'll do a deep dive on side mount for some training philosophies. I don't want to get into it this episode, but there's a couple of ways to go about that I think are interesting. The 5.5 or the 5.1000.
Or you could just get the UTD side mount manifold.
Oh, God. Let's add 6 points of failure. Woo! 6. I don't know.
I think there's actually here. I think I heard someone say that there was 27 O-rings in that thing. That's crazy.
Jesus, I was talking about where all the ports or all the hoses plug into is what I was saying. Wow, 27. Boy, all right. So remember how we said deep dive episodes
Yeah.
are going to be 30 minutes? Well, it wouldn't be a deep dive if it was a shorter episode anyway. It really
Let's keep
wouldn't.
going. We're not
So
done with gear
why
yet.
don't we keep going? Yeah. So side mount. Let's talk about
Oh,
side
no,
mount. I'm going to go first.
We're not done with
Okay,
gear yet. Let's
I
keep talking about gear.
What?
Oh, okay.
Well, I meant side mount gear,
Gotcha.
side mount harness.
What
That's
fins
gear.
do you dive, Josh?
I dive the Dive Right XT fins. Here's why. I dove the Apex RK3s, I believe they're called. Yeah, RK3s. And I love those fins.
The
RK3s? By the way. Great fins. Okay. Especially, yes, I love them for recreational diving. I love them. I took my Cave CCR class against the flow. It was one of the weird times where Peacock actually had a surface boil. And believe me, it actually happens. Yeah, it had a surface boil at P1. So I was kicking against the flow, and after our first dive, during our sort of AAR after action review type thing, the assistant instructor mentioned that I was kicking so hard that my fins were folding backwards. I thought he was joking. He was probably exaggerating a little bit, but it made me want to try something else. So I said, hey, try the XTs by Dive Right. I did. Those fins are so much, I don't want to say harder, but I'm going to use the word harder. They're so much harder to kick as opposed to the RK3s that my calves actually hurt for the first 10 minutes of the dive. But once my calves warmed up, oh my God, man, so much more power for so much less effort. Those things are just amazing. I love them. Yeah. Thank you, Lamar.
Thank you, Lamar, and everybody else at Dive Right.
Whatever, you guys. Hi, Justin. Hi, Eli.
Cool. So I do know several people that dive the Dive Right XTs. I have tried them. I think they're a decent fin, but they're not. I can't get as much propulsion out of those as I can out of my favorite fin on the planet, the Deep Six Eddy fins. Or, sorry, Chris, the Deep Six Eddy flippers. Chris likes to call them flippers.
Oh, boy. Well, you know what? That actually does seem to be the two main fins that you see these days are the XTs and the Deep Sixes. Well, so I'm not
the Scuba
overly
Pro
surprised.
Jet fins if you're wearing a tri-laminate dry suit, but
well, I'm wearing a tri-laminate.
Okay, the jet fins are a very popular fin.
Gosh,
and not just for GUE divers.
That's true, especially if you wear Converse. Okay, no comment.
So the Deep Six Eddy fins. As an instructor, I literally have people that need to demo, rent, or whatever it may be. So I have 9 or 10 pair in different sizes. I love them. I think they're great. They are fairly inexpensive as compared to other tech fins. They give a huge amount of propulsion. My favorite thing about them is that the foot pocket is rounded on top and not rectangular or square. So they're just a very, very comfortable fin to wear. They come with a spring strap included and already connected, as opposed to some other tech fins that make you use a rubber strap from the factory, but you can buy, like the jet fins, you have to buy spring straps for them.
Yeah,
that's an extra purchase, whatever the price may be. I don't know, but they come with it, and they come with a big. I don't know what the material is, but similar material, like a pull on the back of the heel, or you can just put the fabric loop over it so you can have nothing. So they're fantastic fins. Come in several different colors, but I have all black.
Well, of course, because all the cool tech divers
because
wear
appearance matters, right, Josh?
It's a thing. It's a thing. So so that's fins. And hey, just so everybody knows, if you have a question specifically about, like Dean said, the color or the specific brand, even the model, feel free to leave it in the comments. Or if you're listening to us through the podcast, reach out to us any way you can. Really, I think we have some desire to put a Facebook group together and a Facebook page. I don't know where exactly we're at and all that, but we're working on it. And, there'll be an email out there for us here soon too. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, all this stuff will be in the description of the podcast and the video. But just what I'm saying is don't be concerned. Feel free to reach out and ask. Dean bites. I don't bite. So
I've been called that. I've been called a biter. I've been called.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? My favorite description of me is stern but fair. And I am. I think anyway. Maybe.
Are you?
I mean, to people I like anyway. So if you're a potential student or a future student, just make sure I like you. You'll be okay. So
Yeah,
listen,
well,
not to call you rude, but you've been rude because you talked about your mask first, and you never asked me about what kind of mask I use. What do I
so I know
wear?
what kind of mask you wear. You wear one of those pink ones, pink fuzzy ones that have the
With
eyeballs on them. You
with
know
the
what I'm talking
slinky
about?
eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you wear, is it not?
No,
No?
I'm a big fan of the Hollis
I'm
M1s.
remiss.
So they make a couple different masks. The M1 it's a great mask. My fiance Shelby drives the Hollis M4 because it's a little bit smaller for her face, but on my face, it looks way too tiny. It does not fit well. A mask is a very important piece of gear to have fit your face properly, because if it doesn't, you're going to be spending the entire dive clearing your mask, and it's just going to frustrate the hell out of you. So I like them so much. I own several of those. It's my primary. It's my backup. And just a small little sidebar, I hear a lot of people talking about their backup gear where, oh yeah, I use this because, it's just my backup. Please, for the love of God, if you're on a backup piece of gear, something has gone wrong. It should be better gear, or at least the same from what you're usually wearing all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Don't just grab whatever mask you can find off the shelf and say, "This is
Nope.
my backup mask."
Without
now.
a doubt. When I was
Totally.
just after my which class was that? I took a stage class with Jill Heinerth, and we dove into Little River. For those of you that don't know, Little River can have a massive amount of flow, I guess is a good word to use. Maybe that doesn't even cover it, because sometimes it can get really hairy. So
Oh yeah.
I went to Amigos Dive Shop in Fort White, Florida, and I rented a couple of stage rigs because I didn't have stage rigs at the time, and some tanks. At the time, believe it or not, I was diving my HP 119 double back mount configuration. So I was just slinging 2 stage bottles and put the stage rig in my mouth on dive 1, went in following buddy number 1. Everything was fine. But dive 2, I went under my stage bottle, and I was leading the dive, and having that flow hitting me and pulling and gliding through that kind of flow, I took a CO hit because I was just over breathing so much because the regs were not quality regs. At that point, I decided that, and it actually happened twice. We came up, we surfaced, we talked about it, and Jill said, "Hey, why don't you just try getting in on your back ass and then switch to your stage bottle?" I said, "Okay, cool." Me being stupid, this was early on in my career. I said, "You know what? I want to know for sure." So I went under my stage rig again and wound up thumbing it again. So at that point, I said, I will never, ever, ever rent a rig again. So I own every rig that I use. Yeah.
Samesies.
So rental gear can be questionable. Again, I mentioned it earlier in this episode, trust but verify. If you go somewhere in the tropics, their rental gear is probably being used so often, there's a chance it might not have been serviced or taken really good care of. Please, for the love of God and all that is good in diving, test your stuff before you splash.
For sure. So real quick, back on the topic of masks. You have undoubtedly sold masks before. So what should a new diver or even an experienced diver do to make sure the mask they're buying is the right mask for them? What kind of tests can they do in the dive shop?
Typically, what most people will have you do is they'll have you take the mask and push the strap onto the front side of it, and then just gently push it against your face and inhale through your nose a little bit to see if the mask sticks. If it doesn't stick, it's not shaped good enough for your face. Too much gas is seeping in from the outside, and it will fall away once you let it go with your hand. If that happens, don't say, "Oh, this will work." Don't say, "Oh, it's good enough." You really, really, really should work to find a proper fitting mask. And when you find one, like I said before, buy 2 so you can have a backup the same.
Right, and there's always, of course, the other thing where you've got this sort of plastic in the middle of your mask that when you suck that mask to your face and the plastic hits the bridge of your nose, of course, you're always going to have some air in your mask, so you shouldn't have the issue. But some masks, the way they fit, they'll be riding the bridge of your nose the entire dive. And for 5 minutes, it might be okay. But trust me, when you've been diving for 30, 40, an hour, or even tech diving, you're doing 3, 4, 5 hour dives, and you get out of the water and you've got this giant red indentation on your face from how uncomfortable it was, man, it just makes mask squeeze that much worse when you've got a mask that doesn't really fit your face properly. So take the time, make sure that the dive shop that you're at has somebody that's walking you through how to test your mask, and not just saying, well, here's this $209 mask, and it looks really good on your face, and it
we have a
comes
high
in the color
margin.
you want. So this is the one that you should get. Yeah, yeah. So really, again, color's important, but fit is really everything when it comes to a mask.
Yep,
the seal
absolutely.
and the fit. So we said we're side mount divers, Dean. What BCD are you using, and why did you choose that? Because there's a lot of options out there.
There definitely are, and I've tried quite a few of them. Dive Right, X Deep, Apex, Dive Soft. I've tried quite a few. I have had access to, through Ed in the shop, Cave Adventures, I've had access to the new Katana 2. Well, not really new anymore, but the newest of the Hollis side mount harnesses, the Katana 2. I had test diving on the alpha and the beta models for the prototypes. And as soon as they came out, I don't know how, but Ed gets a lot of the Hollis stuff, before most others. So he got some, and I've had one ever since. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Before that, I had an SMS 75. Similar in some ways, but very different in a lot of other ways. The selling points for me on the K2, there's a couple above and beyond everything else. The K2 has kind of a sewn seam in almost a V shape on the back of it. And in between those seams, there is a hard plastic plate. So instead of the thing ballooning up like a beach ball, it forces the gas out to the sides before it rises, which keeps your profile shorter. And in cave diving, that can be very beneficial. The harness itself, the bladder inside, actually has baffle walls, so the gas doesn't transfer so quickly if you roll to look at something. So that's another big one. The biggest of all, their dump is right here, just a little teardrop on a thread that dumps right between the shoulder blades at the base of your neck. You don't have to change trim or position, just little tiny pull. Some people pull out, which is a mistake. You should pull down towards your chest or toward your pecs, and the gas comes out. If you don't hear gas coming out, then water's going in and you're pulling too long.
Okay. So, you know what? Actually, someone asked us to talk about the K2 in one of the one of our
Waldo.
posts, and also when I mentioned, I'm going to call you out here, Tim, because we had this discussion and it's all good. When I mentioned that I bought a K2, that individual said that I needed to just pick a harness and become performant with that harness instead of trying a bunch of others. And I explained, and we're going to get your opinion on this. I explained that I completely agree. You should absolutely become proficient with one piece of gear, but until you find the right piece of gear for the job that you're doing, you should not spend a lot of time becoming proficient with that gear. So I'm just
try them all. Do
opinion.
As many demos as you possibly can. Find a local shop. If the local shop right near you can't give you exposure or access to the types of gear or the specific gear you want to try, go find another shop. It's worth driving an hour or 2 or 3 or even 4 and spending a weekend doing some dives at a new quarry or a new dive site on the coast or whatever it may be to actually get some experience in the different types of gear. I have had so many people that I've dived with and so many students that say, hey, how can we dive that? Well, it was available, so I got it, and someone said it was good, and so what do you think? Oh,
yep.
I hate it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a thing.
Yep, absolutely.
It's definitely a thing.
And, if you'd listened to, I'm talking to the audience here, if you had listened to episode 2, you guys would know that I started my cave diving career with a Apex WSX 25, which has 25 pounds of lift, and I was using steel tanks. So, my argument was, had I just stuck with that one piece of gear and become proficient with it, I'd still be using something that was absolutely not suited to the type of diving that I wanted to do, which of course was cave diving with steel tanks. So now I dive the X-Deep Stealth 2.0 Tech. I almost always start to say classic, but I don't think classic is in the title. It's a very similar design in the bladder with the K2 from what you've described. I don't know the K2 well enough to say if that's completely accurate, but there's the sewn seam. It's got a plastic piece there in the middle, and then the actual bladder sort of wraps around your side. So when you inflate, it does inflate the sides of your harness instead of your back, where you get that sort of turtle shell effect going on, like my Apex did in my Scuba Force blade. and also my Dive Right LS. Not less so with the LS, but I just don't think that you can beat the design that the X Deep and apparently the K2 have, where with it inflating around your sides. I really like that. But on the topic of dumps, and I know that you're waiting for me to confess that you have the cooler dump. I get it. All right. Yes, I have a butt dump, and you do have to reach around your giant tank and grab this little 1-inch cord and kind of shift your butt higher up into the air and then pull your dump in order for it to dump. When I first got it,
so as you're swimming,
yes,
I got to vent my dry suit. I got to vent my BC. I got to vent my dry suit. I got to vent my BC. I got to vent my dry suit. I got to vent my BC.
So interesting. I don't vent my dry suit by bringing my shoulders up. I roll. Yeah, I roll a little bit, and that's enough to get it to vent. But yeah, I mean, venting the X Deep by humping up a little bit I've gotten used to it. I'm comfortable doing it. I'm proficient doing it. So I'm sure once I try the K2, I'll have something to say about it. But for now, I'm happy with what I've got going on, and I'm proficient, which is really what's important. As long as you're safe with your gear, then
and just to clarify, anybody that's listening, if you like the gear that you have, if it works for you, and if you've become proficient in it, tell all the naysayers, take a hike. It doesn't really matter if they like your gear. It's your gear. You need to use it. You need to be good with it. You need to be proficient with it. You need to have muscle memory for it.
100%. You need to like it.
Doesn't matter if someone else, hey Josh, I don't like that because that looks crappy on you. So what? It's my opinion. We're entitled to have it, and you're entitled to tell me shut up.
There's a whole world of people out there that hate every piece of gear that you use and think it's the worst thing that was ever made. So like your gear. Don't worry about whether we like your gear or anybody else likes your gear. Get what works best for you. Just make sure that the gear that you choose is the correct type of gear for the type of diving you want to do. AKA, your Aqualung Pro HD does not belong in a cave. And your
Scuba Pro split jet fins don't belong in a cave either.
Yes, please don't do that. Oh boy, I was hoping we weren't going to say those words.
It almost has to come up in every scuba conversation ever, doesn't it?
Muttered a dirty word. Only when it's a bad conversation. So we've got thermal protection, we've got fins, we've got masks, we've got air sources, we even have regulators. I think we're going to have a separate deep dive on CCR.
Yeah, that's way too big a topic to get done in the next 8 to 10 minutes.
For sure. Especially because you and I have different units and different experience with those units. So we want to spend some time talking about ECCR versus MCCR and which M are we talking about, because I only recently found out that for KISS, it means mechanical CCR and not manual. So all kinds of stuff to go over. But I think, unless you can think of something else, I think that covers the majority of what we were hoping to get to as far as gear goes. Weight, computer.
And also lights.
We didn't talk about computer.
Let's talk about computers.
Lights and computer. Okay. Shearwater. What was the question? I just all I heard. So what? Shearwater? Yeah. Computer conversation is done. Shearwater sent us a couple of predictions for that plug.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Listen, there's, I don't know, probably what? Active right now, maybe 30 different dive computers, ballpark, somewhere around there, covering recreational, technical, Trimax, all that kind of stuff. There's a couple dozen at least.
Definitely then, for sure.
Some work great, some work okay. Again, we've said this quite a bit. Really has a lot to do with the type of diving that you're doing. I will say, now that I've said that, Shearwater has a product for everyone. They really do. They've got the Peregrine, which is a $450 recreational computer that can take you almost all the way through full technical. Can't do Trimax, and doesn't do air integration.
And it can be a console.
Other than that, it's a great computer, especially for the price point.
And it can be a console, which is important. If you want to switch between console and wrist mounted, the Peregrine
I did not know that.
Capable of doing
Very
that.
Cool.
Yeah, they sell a console version, which you can remove and get a strap.
Shearwater has also just recently come out with their the new Perdix 2 AI and Petrel 3, which the Petrol 3 is the EXT for CCR diving. And the Perdix is probably, if I had to take a guess, again, we haven't done a study, but it's probably one of the most popular technical dive computers on the planet.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And really what sets Shearwater apart isn't just the computer, but also the customer service. I mean, I've had two things now where I had issues. Neither one of them were mine, which was interesting, but I had a Petrol controller when I was borrowing a rebreather, which I was certified to dive, by the way, and the depth sensor failed. And it was almost a year old, mailed it in. They replaced the board, gave it a new screen cover thing, sent me a brand new box, new straps and everything, and it was back in a couple of days. You know how much it cost me? Zero.
We probably
Nothing.
shouldn't
Cost
get
me
into
zero.
prices
Amazing.
on here ever. Oh, well, that's why. Okay.
Well, it's warranty, so
Cool.
that's why it cost me nothing. Yeah. I mean,
well, we don't want to
they did it for
portray
free.
that to anyone either. Yeah. Hey, Josh got one for free.
Nobody
Why
likes
can't
me
mine
like
get
that.
fixed for free?
Yeah.
It was
Nobody
under
likes me
warranty,
like that.
so
Sorry.
at least we specified that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, nobody likes me.
And then
enough
finally,
to do it
Shearwater
for
has
free,
their
but-
Terric, which is,
Yeah, so go ahead.
for me anyway, more of just a recreational. It's a watch. You can wear it as a watch all day long, every day. It's actually kind of sexy as a watch. It's all black, and black on black on black is, probably the best color combination you can get, because black dive computers matter too. I don't dive my Terric in the caves or in any kind of technical diving, just because it's just a small watch face compared to the other screens that they have. I'd like to have a big screen with as much information as possible. So I only wear my Terric when I'm actually diving in Bonaire or Honduras or somewhere in the tropics. So.
All right, look, we knew it was going to come up. We're here to talk about it. Somebody's going to be in the comments saying the Garmin MK2 is the best dive computer there is. And I understand that you like split fins. Okay, it is what it is, guys. Look, in all seriousness, if it works for you, I'm happy for you. It does a lot of the same stuff, maybe all of the same stuff. It's just not. It's just not for me. And I'm saying this factually because I know this is going to cause some heat. It is a fact that several shops have dropped Garmin in the past couple of months for quality control issues over the build quality of their computers. So if I had to give Shearwater or Garmin the edge, it would be Shearwater, simply because that just doesn't happen with Shearwater.
And I will say, I've never dove an MK2. I've never even held one in my hand and played with it. Pardon?
Nor I, must say. I said, nor I must say, I have not dove one either. So I'm speaking from ignorance.
From what I can gather, the people that I know that do dive and love their MK2, they are also into surface sports, jogging, running, walking, whatever it may be. And it's a sports watch and a dive computer. So it's a multi-purpose. For me, if I want a sports watch, I'll go to a sports watch. If I want a dive computer, I'm going to get a dive computer. I'm going to get the best thing I could find in that category. I'm not going to try and spend $300 extra on one of them, so I don't have to buy the other one. I'd rather have the best of each. So,
yep. I have an Apple Watch. I have no desire to replace my Apple Watch with a computer that I can dive with. It's just me. We won't get into what's better.
I have an Apple Watch also.
All right, so let's close off with lights, and then I know you've got to give your closing message, and we'll get off here. So let's do lights.
I dive what I feel is technologically, construction, durability, brightness, beam angle, customer service, every angle of this light or every point of this light. Huh?
Dive right.
No.
Dive right is my guess.
Underwater light dude. Underwater light dude.
Walmart. Oh, okay. You know what? Let me tell you, the only reason I didn't think that it was Underwater Light Dude, is his name Billy?
Yeah, people call him Bobby Lights for short.
I don't remember. Bobby. The only reason I didn't think of Bobby, only reason I didn't think it was Bobby is because I am too poor to afford Bobby Lights.
Gotcha.
So he wasn't even on my list.
Listen,
I'm too poor. I can't do it.
I said it before.
That's like the Ferrari.
I believe in the buy once, cry once philosophy. My Bobby Light is... I believe a 5th gen head, which does not have the LED indicator on the light head to tell you what your battery status is. But it is a 35 watt LED. I have a 160 amp hour battery, which is the biggest battery he offers. And I got to tell you, I have never, ever had a problem. They allow for off-board charging. You basically take your canister on. I leave my canister on my harness. I lay it on my bench on the back of my house, and I just take the charge cap and just match it up to the bottom of the canister. You don't have to open it. You don't have to break the seal, lube O-rings. Nice. Once you make that connection in the head, it stays connected. And you can actually stack caps on his lights. So if you got a 160 amp battery, you can have a primary dive light head. You can have a video light head. You can have a suit warming heater vest head, and they can all stack onto the same battery. That may not be the best thing to do because you don't want to run out of light battery or heat battery, depending on the dive you're doing, but you have the flexibility. Yeah.
That is cool. I dive Right LX 20 pluses. I have 2 of those, and I carry 2 Big Blue TL 3800P lights as well. The Big Blue specifically were on sale when I bought them, and I was like, hey, why don't I try Big Blue out? You know, it's a good price. So I actually carry, technically speaking, 4 primary lights instead of 1 primary and 2 backups. That's just me. I don't really care for small backup lights, but again, that's just my personal preference. And again, we're talking about gear selection and why we did it. So in my case, let's address that for a second.
So there is a benefit from not having a primary and 2 backups like I dive. You basically have 4 primaries, right? So if you're diving a primary on your left hand or right hand or wherever, we can get to that in another episode, but you're diving a primary light, your primary light goes bad, take it off, unclip it, pull out another light. You can continue to dive because you still have 2 other lights as primaries, but you're using them as backups. So,
yep, exactly. Yep, and you would not want to push the dive any further on a backup light ever.
The general policy or the general design of a backup light, they're usually fairly small, so you can put them in pockets easy or clip them to your shoulder straps on your harness. Most backup lights will run off a 18650 or like the Light Monkey, I think, uses the 123s, you know, CR 123s in their 2-watt light. They're smaller, they're less battery, there's less power. So they're basically, hey, my primary light died. Let's turn the dive and start our exit. And I have these small little lights that can get me out safely. With you having multiple primary lights, you can continue your dive, which is an awesome way to approach it. Yeah. It's probably the last also.
That's a first. Well, guys, we're right at that hour mark. And as usual, we sort of really finished everything we had to say right at the hour mark. It's amazing how that always ends up happening. We are trying to get some shorter episodes, but that's really going to come down to the topics. Maybe if we talk about just our rebreathers, we can do that in 30 minutes, but I don't know, guys. Let us know what you want us to talk about, either in the comments or contacting us in any way. I want you to know sincerely that Dene and I love and appreciate each and every one of you for the support that you guys give. The messages that we get that are like, hey, we love it. Can't wait for the next episode. You have no idea what that means. I mean, it's literally awesome.
It's a feel-good feeling in my heart
about scuba diving, man. Dean,
awesome. we had a great time. We hope you guys come back and listen to us next week. I think, Josh, we're talking now about having a regular episode on Mondays, and our deep dives will be on Thursdays. We'll get more specific into one topic.
Yes. So Monday, 7 a.m. Monday, and then Thursday, probably around the same time they'll be released. And again, the Thursday episodes will just be a specific topic like we did today, which was gear selection.
In closing, I said this in the closing last time, but I want to explain it. So I have this thing that I'm making stickers and everything. It's something that I really believe in. Hashtag dive as if. What does dive as if mean, you might ask? Well, it could mean a number of different things, but the biggest one and the most important, dive as if anything and everything that can possibly go wrong in your dive is going to happen right now. If you can do that, when it does happen, when it does go wrong, no matter what it is, it's not going to be a big issue. You just turn your dive and safely exit. That's it. Don't forget to dive as if, folks.
Awesome.